School's in. I'm up to something again. I wanted to explain about two issues. One, on my Ford with the Offenhauser conversion, where I went from fuel injection to carburation with the Offenhauser intake. Um, I did get a nice performance factor out of that until I tried to accelerate. So, I've hit another snag, and that's because of Summit. So, this one's going to be addressed to you eggheads out there at Summit. Um, Most of us that are restoring something vintage, and even if you want to improve your fuel delivery, okay, I'm going to choose my words carefully here, okay? I've always turned to Summit through the years, um, not just because if you have a problem with a product, they're going to take care of it. I really appreciate that. So I don't want Summit disliking me, but you're doing some really dumb stuff right now, and you're doing it to your customer. What am I talking about? Carburation is one thing, fuel injection is another. I've been using a stock, basically a lift pump, which is made to prime the fuel pump that's on the rail. So there's two pumps, one on the frame rail, and then there's the pump in the tank. So I've been using the stock pump in the tank to lift the fuel to, as Derek calls these, a clickety clack. Okay. Now I went to a Holly, the 127 or 427 pump. It's a 32 GPS. These I believe are about 25 gallons per hour. Okay, GPS is gallons per hour, GPH rather. Okay, so this is a Summit pump. So got it to run. When I'd start it up, it would run really, really smooth, and I would go like right out of my driveway. That thing would go like a gunshot. And then, as I'm in traffic, I'm assuming the pump was heating up, and it was not feeding enough fuel. So I was getting dead spots in my acceleration, and I could not make it up a steep hill. It would only go so far before it would seem like was running out of gas. And just like Uncle Tony's Garage, I like Tony DeFeo. He's pretty much spot on. And he covers a lot of things that other people where you're going to make a mistake. Okay? This pump I don't really like because their filter, the Holly filter is different. It's for 3/8 line. Okay? This you'll get a 3/8 and tighten the clamp. You'll get it on there probably. But you want to have 3/8 into the pump. Coming out, you want a smaller. You probably want to go to a line like this. Where is it? Well, I had it here. But you want to go probably to like a 1/4 inch ID, which is basically like a 5/16, a true 5/16. Another problem you're going to encounter, Summit has to get on top of things, okay? A lot of the fuel line that is metric, SAE, okay, it's all the same. It's all metric line, but they're labeling it SAE. And believe me, when you buy it and you're an old timer like me, you know the frickin' difference. They're switching it out on you. They're taking metric line and they're putting an SAE designation on it. Because throughout my career, okay, 5/16 OD, what they call 5/16 line, okay, it was just a little bit larger inside than 1/4 inch. Okay, so that's how I know I'm getting metric line. Now, they're not so much doing it with 3/8. 3/8 is still pretty much a 3/8 line, which is actually 5/16 ID. And it's a little bit larger. So the 3/8 line is still pretty much holding true. Okay, but it's when you get into these smaller lines that you need, and you need it on an SAE designation. Primarily, the 5/16 line is not true 5/16 line. But you want a smaller line ahead of your fuel pump into your carburetor. That's what helps build what I call consistent, sufficient pressure. Now, the second part of my school, okay? This Mickey Mouse through the bulkhead fitting is what I wanted to cover when I say about fuel tanks. This is light metal, some kind of white metal garbage. It's going back to Summit. Not to mention they charged me about $25. Okay? This fitting, okay, when you're going from fuel injection, you got to put a port up. This is called a through the bulkhead fitting. And this is what I would prefer to have, and that's the price. Everything you buy at Summit, they're charging you $12, $13 in freaking shipping, even if it's a $6 item. They're charging that much money, okay? But anyway, making my point about fuel delivery. You've got to have an outlet in the bottom of your tank, and that's what you really want, is a 90 degree fitting, okay? So I've got to wait. My truck is going to be laid up over a week probably. I am going to get the tank out of it, cover it up with a tarp, and then when it comes, I'll know exactly what size hole to drill. I'll put that in there, and I'll probably be okay. Because like I said, it was atrocious trying to climb a hill. Now, we're going to switch to Silverados, 5.3, 6.0, 4.8, those motors, even anything. You're getting that dead miss. You got a cylinder. It's gone. Can't figure it out. 9 chances out of 10, it's not a collapsed lifter. 9 chances out of 10, it's your fuel injector. But how do you tell the difference? Because that's one of the things. This is the easiest thing to switch out. You see these? Okay, that's a stock coil. That's what I have on Tara out there now. These were real easy. And even a bad coil, if you're getting that intermittent loss of spark, that intermittent misfire after the engine's hot, normally it's your coils. Or it's your fuel injectors. What I suggest when these trucks hit 200,000 miles, you got damn near 250,000 miles on them. Look, change that stuff out, okay? Because you might go to a mechanic and he's going to tell you your engine is bad. I just had that with a customer, and they said, oh, you have collapsed lifters. And basically the guy only lives a couple blocks from here. He drove the truck in the driveway and it was idling fine. So I said, well, look, I got to go over to Lowe's. I needed a fitting for my hoses. I'm going to get some tomato plants. I needed a fitting for my hoses. Okay. Got over to Lowe's. Truck was still fine. Now, get out of Lowe's, and truck was still fine. We got to a stoplight, and we started getting the miss. And you get in the idle. So we pulled over. There was a space, parking space. I opened the hood, and I could see the engine was not running right. He says to me, Jesus, Uncle Dutch, what do you think it is? What do you think it is? I said, well, the easy fix. I said, you can get a set of coils. I said, even those performance coils, the ones that come from Germany, I said, they've come down in price. You can get probably a set of them for about $100. So he gets the set of coils, and there was a drastic improvement. Drastic. But he was still getting the misfire after it got really hot. And I said, that's not coils. I said, that's fuel injectors. Oh my God, how much is that going to cost? $155 on Fleabay. We got AC Delcos, and I have a set coming for my truck. So he took it somewhere else. I didn't have time. I'm getting ready to have a back surgery. Okay, he threw those lifters in because I checked. I pulled the valve covers. I looked at the rockers were going up and down real nice. Every lifter had a return to it. Every lifter had a high spot. Now I'm just going by the eyeball. I'm not going with measuring devices and getting that anal. But anyway, he took it somewhere else. The fuel injectors are in. And he said, God damn, I'm glad I listened to you. I says to him, look, Tony. I says, and that's my Tony. And his name is D'Onofrio. Believe it or not, like Tony DeFeo. That's I can remember Uncle Tony's name. Listen, Tony took it to the garage. They charged him $175 to swap the fuel injectors out. But he left with another problem. The fuel lines. They must have done their job. They looked underneath and they said to Tony, you're into $500-600 with us next visit. Those fuel lines are on their way out. And that could have been what shit canned the injectors. And it could have been along the lines. I did have I did have problems right before this other motor that was in my truck that went. I did switch out the fuel lines. So there could be dirt in those injectors. And at the price of $100 for a new set, it's reasonable. So that's where I come in with my conjecture. It hits 200 and some odd thousand miles. It's time for that stuff anyway if you're going to keep the truck. And I don't give a shit how rusty they are. They can be fixed. especially if you were, a do-it-yourself guy like me. It's the problem is when I get jobs in. Now, I'm not really scheduling anything here because you're like, what are you out of business? And no, I've got to go for back surgery, and I don't know what I'm in for. I'm in for a rodeo, and I don't know what what's gonna what's gonna happen. So you don't take on work and take somebody's vehicle and then, oh, my back, I just had surgery. If something goes wrong, I'm really in deep shit. I do trust the doctor. He's a old time Army guy, old school, and he's like top rated. So I don't think he's going to screw me up. I'm already pretty much shot. That's why I was telling my buddy Joe out in Indiana. You don't want any of my polluted. He had a kidney problem. I says, Joe, you don't want any of my polluted old body parts. I says, I belong in the salvage yard. So when I hit the great salvage yard, I hit the great salvage yard. But I'm not going to piss off a customer, take their vehicle apart, and then go have back surgery, not be able to get it back together. So that precludes my video, except for telling you about this. It is possible to break a valve spring and not even know it. The valve spring is only broken when you're at high RPM. Sometimes you can tell by going in with a bore scope and making sure your valves are all open. Okay? Because sometimes if it's a lifter, this will detect it. Your valve is not opening when it's, it actually says the valve is opening, but it's not. Now, the other way to do it is to take the rockers off, take your push rod, and make sure you got a return. Make sure you got that spongy feeling off that lifter. Because if you don't, or it's not going up and down, where I believe what I saw in my truck, the valves are opening. It's just that it's a totally dead cylinder, which is telling me, since I have coils out the wing wang, they all work, they've all been tested, it's telling me it's time for fuel injectors. So, the problem I had with the Silverado, I stuck my my Predator, my Diablo, and the battery must have been low. Something must have glitched, and it blew the computer up. So I took it out to another guy, and $600 in towing, my towing bill, because I shit can AAA. I'm not going to pay him no more. And the guy at the shop charged me $350 for the or $300 for the new computer. And so it does fire, it does run. But the shop that actually dropped the motor in did not connect the dipstick tube, so I had transmission fluid dumping out all over, and then we had to drive it and back it up. I'm hoping the transmission's going to be okay, which I think it will. That trans was rebuilt by somebody very competent. When I was in there, that had all performance solenoids and clutches. That's a nice transmission that's still in the truck. That's why I'm not willing to give it up. That thing drove like everybody's dream. So that's my video on fuel systems, okay? Your Silverado hits 250,000 miles. It's time for fuel injectors and a set of coils, okay? It's okay to keep those coil packs if you think they're still functioning and they're fine. Because a lot of times, like I said, the process I would do that in is I would check my valves and my lifters, and if that's all okay, then I would go replace my coils anyway, because it's time, okay? Keep your old coils in case you get a new clinker. But then you put new coils in, and a lot of times people are satisfied with the performance out of that. It does pick up the performance of the vehicle a little bit. But it's the fuel injectors. When they get to be 250,000 miles on them, it's time for new ones. And I got the 4-hole injectors because I believe that's what's in there. Because that truck always had very nice pickup. I mean, it would get up there and it would fly. So then, like I said, when you're switching from fuel injection, and they don't even sell a bulkhead fitting a 90 degree. They don't. Some at half the people I talked to didn't even know what. And then there are companies that are making fuel cells because of the economy. They're shrinking, and it's all going to China. And I've had people that are racing where ASA or NASCAR or one of the other sanctioning bodies is saying you got to run this fuel cell, and they don't make the fucking thing no more. So then you get something else, and they flag you at the track and say you're not running tonight. Well, you know what? You want to keep all the big boys on the track, and people. If you want the people to, I like to come see the underdog, the new guy that came on the track. Now I'm weird. I mean, I might have a favorite driver, but I'm for that new guy that just came on the track. Maybe that's part of aging, I think. But I am for the new guy that comes on the track. I want to root for him. I want to see him do good. But if you're going to flag him at the gate because he doesn't have a part they don't make no more to get on the track, and that's specifically fuel system stuff, it's all going to China. I've had 2 different bad fuel regulators. I don't know where to turn, okay? I'm happy with my China Brock carburetor. That's all I can say is sometimes I've got to go to the low budget. There's only so much money, and right now during tough times, that's going to be my second video I'm making today, because I'm going to go right down Elon Musk's throat and Trump. When I'm paying just as much for fucking, I'm actually paying more for cat food and cat litter than I am paying for my own food. Just about it's about the same. I'm at almost $350, $400 a month, pretty much $450 a month. I think I would state for food and to feed my animals. That's shit for the birds. It used to be a quarter of that. I used to be able to get by with $250, $200, because I do buy extras. Then there's toilet paper, there's paper towels. It's not just food. Everything is up through the roof. And these jokers, what do they think? Seniors and disabled people, veterans like me, are going to get more money? But anyway, I'm going to address those jack-offs on Twitter. I'm going to give them a video. So thanks for listening to my videos, and I will cover that as I'm doing that with that fuel system on both those trucks. Okay, the first thing to do is to get them apart and illustrate. If you have any curiosities or questions, shoot them my way. And good luck getting decent hose clamps, especially don't buy the fuel injection clamps, the stainless ones. Don't get them on Scamazon. Get them on eBay. I've got a company, and I suspect, since there was a B on, all it said was B on the package, and it was a cardboard box, and I don't have it anymore. It's down my other shop. I used it on a John Deere tractor that my buddy brought in. But anyway, those were decent clamps, and they worked nice. And they were 7 They're 7 millimeter. If you get fuel injection clamps for like 3/8 and 1/4 inch line thereabout, or I should say 6 and 8 and 10 millimeter. I think the 10 millimeter. I think they're a larger clamp for 10 millimeter, but they're all 7 millimeter on the nut, the bolt, the head where you turn them. But these were very nice, very smooth install, and I didn't have one bad clamp in the box. They were very nice, hefty clamps. And as I said, the only damn thing on the cardboard box was a B, so I'm suggesting, or I'm insinuating that maybe they're Breeze clamps. And I did pay, I think, $22 for the box of clamps. Put your fuel system together right. Don't use those Mickey Mouse Chinese in those plastic assortment boxes. Don't use that shit on your fuel system. Because if you do have to work on it or drop the tank in the future, you're not going to get that bullshit loose. They're cheap white metal clamps. They fail, they strip out, and they rust tight. And then you gotta buy fuel line again because you gotta cut your lines, especially if you cut them tight. It's just another problem you don't need. Spend that extra $10. Don't be tempted to get those boxes for 9 and 8 and 9, whatever they're selling them for. They're not that Chinese hose clamps. They're not worth the money. And the other thing is, an American-made hose clamp is 1/4 inch. When you buy those assortment packs, it's usually a 6 millimeter screw. That's how you're going to tell the difference whether you have a Chinese clamp or an actual American-made Ideal or Breeze clamp. And there is another company, I think it's Acme or something like that. They make clamps, but there's only about 3 people in the United States that still make clamps, okay? Your fuel system is your most important part of your build, and that's what provides your power. And if you're like me and you've been fighting this Mickey Mouse fuel starvation issue, I am so anxious to see how that thing works after I engineered this fuel system, and I will show you and illustrate it to you. Thanks, guys.